February 23rd, 2026, 21:17 local time. The Gulf of Oman. The USS Milius is burning. Not a small fire. Not a contained fire. A conflagration that stretches from her aft superstructure to her helicopter hangar. Flames reaching 30 feet into the night sky, threatening to cook off the ammunition in her aft magazine. An Iranian Noor anti-ship missile has struck her engine room. The hit ruptured fuel lines, ignited lubricating oil, and turned the heart of the destroyer into an inferno. 8 sailors are dead. 12 more are missing in the fire zone, almost certainly dead as well. The ship's damage control teams are fighting a losing battle against flames that keep finding new fuel sources. This is not a ship in crisis. This is a ship in the process of dying. I'm your host at U.S. Defense Review, where we analyze the military operations that define global security. What happened on the Millius, and what happened 34 minutes later, would demonstrate both the fragility of modern warships and the institutional refusal of the United States Navy to accept defeat. The Millius was burning. She was dying. And she was about to become the launching platform for one of the most devastating strikes of the entire Gulf confrontation. Let's understand what happened. The USS Milius was conducting routine patrol operations in the Gulf of Oman, approximately 95 nautical miles from the Iranian coast. She was operating alone. Her nearest support was the cruiser USS Princeton, 70 nautical miles to the southwest. At 21:14, a Noor anti-ship missile launched from a concealed position on the Makran coast. The launch was masked by commercial shipping. The missile emerged from behind a large container vessel, invisible to the Milius's radar until it was already close. Detection occurred at 21:14:47. Time to impact: 43 seconds. The ship's Aegis combat system responded immediately. One SM-2 missile launched at 21:14:54. A second followed at 21:14:57. The first SM-2 intercepted the Noor at 21:15:21. The missile was damaged but not destroyed. Its guidance system was wrecked. Its trajectory became erratic. The second SM-2 engaged the damaged missile at 21:15:28. The intercept was successful in the technical sense. The SM-2 detonated within lethal range. But lethal range for an SM-2 means fragments, not complete destruction. The Noor's warhead survived. It was tumbling, no longer guided, but still carrying 165 kilograms of explosive. At 21:15:34, the Noor's warhead struck the USS Milius. The impact point was catastrophic. The warhead hit the aft section of the ship, penetrating the engine room casing and detonating inside the main machinery space. This is where the destroyer's 4 gas turbine engines live, along with the fuel systems that feed them and the lubricating oil that keeps them running. The explosion killed 3 engineers instantly. But the explosion was only the beginning. The blast ruptured the main fuel transfer line. JP-5 aviation fuel, stored in tanks throughout the ship, began spraying into the engine room. The fuel ignited immediately. The fire spread faster than anyone could respond. The lubricating oil caught next. Then the insulation on the electrical cables. Then the rubber seals on the watertight doors. Everything that could burn was burning. Within 60 seconds of impact, the fire had spread from the engine room to the aft auxiliary machinery room. Within 90 seconds, it reached the helicopter hangar. The MH-60R Seahawk in the hangar was fully fueled, 300 gallons of aviation fuel in a confined space. At 21:17:04, the helicopter's fuel tanks ruptured from the heat. The resulting fireball killed 5 more sailors. The flight deck crew, who had been preparing to launch the aircraft. They never had a chance. The USS Milius was now burning from frame 120 to frame 180, a stretch of 60 feet. Flames were reaching through ventilation ducts, finding new pathways, spreading toward the forward sections of the ship. Captain William Chang reached the bridge at 21:18, 164 seconds after impact. He had been in his cabin when the missile hit. The journey to the bridge had taken him through smoke-filled passageways, past wounded sailors, through a ship that was rapidly becoming uninhabitable. What he found on the bridge was a command team in shock. "Give me a status report," he demanded. The officer of the deck's voice was shaking. "Captain, we've lost the engine room. Fire is spreading aft. 8 confirmed dead, 12 missing. Damage control says they can't contain it. We may need to abandon ship." Abandon ship. The words hung in the air. No American destroyer had been abandoned due to enemy action since World War II. The Millius might be the first. But Captain Chang wasn't ready to accept that. "What's the status of the forward sections?" Forward is intact, sir. Fire hasn't spread past frame 120. The forward systems are operational. Operational. That was the key word. The Millius's forward VLS cells, where the Tomahawk missiles lived, were in the forward section of the ship. Away from the fire. Away from the damage. The ship might be dying, but her weapons were still alive. At 2120, Captain Chang made his decision. "Weapons officer, do we have firing capability?" "Yes, sir. Forward VLS is fully operational. Fire control systems are on backup power but functional. Target the launch site. Whatever we have. Fire immediately." The weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, we should probably focus on—" "I gave you an order. Fire, now." At 21:44, the first Tomahawk launched from the forward VLS cells of the USS Milius. The ship was burning. Her captain had been told to consider abandoning her. Her aft section was an Inferno that was slowly consuming everything behind frame 120, and she was launching cruise missiles at the enemy. At 21:48, the second Tomahawk launched. Then the third at 21:52. Then the fourth at 21:56. 4 missiles. Target: the coastal battery that had fired the Noor. Captain Chang then turned back to the immediate crisis. "Damage control, bridge. What do you need to stop this fire?" The chief damage controlman's response came through the intercom, barely audible over the roar of flames in the background. "Captain, we need to flood the aft magazine. If that ammunition cooks off, we lose the ship. And we need to seal the ventilation at frame 120. That's where the fire is spreading. Do it, whatever it takes." At 21:24, seawater began flooding into the aft ammunition magazine. The missiles stored there, a significant portion of the ship's weapons inventory, were ruined, but the ship wouldn't explode. At 21:26, damage control teams sealed the ventilation ducts at frame 120. The fire was starving for oxygen. It wasn't dying, but it wasn't spreading forward anymore. The Millius was going to survive. Barely, but survive. Meanwhile, Captain Chang's transmission had reached 5th Fleet. Vice Admiral Richardson had been monitoring the engagement since the Noor launch. He had watched the intercept. He had watched the impact. He had watched the fire spread. And he had watched Chang launch Tomahawks from a burning ship. That kind of aggression deserved support. At 21:28, Richardson authorized an expanded strike. The target list included the battery that had fired, already targeted by Chang's missiles, plus several additional facilities. The primary expansion was a facility that American intelligence had identified as the Coordination Center for Macron Coast Anti-Ship Operations. This facility had provided targeting data for multiple attacks over the preceding months. It was time to eliminate it. The secondary expansion included 2 suspected ammunition storage sites and a radar installation. Total additional targets, 4. The assets responded immediately. The cruiser USS Princeton, 70 nautical miles away and closing at maximum speed to assist the Millius, launched 8 Tomahawks at 21:32. The submarine USS Hampton, operating in the Arabian Sea, added 8 more at 21:35. 16 additional missiles joined Chang's 4. 20 Tomahawks total. At 21:51, 34 minutes after the Millius was hit, the first weapons arrived. The coastal battery that had fired the Noor was destroyed first. Chang's 4 Tomahawks struck with devastating precision. The launcher vehicles, the radar, the command vehicle, the ammunition, nothing survived. The crew that had launched the missile that was killing the Millius died with their equipment. At 20, this facility was hardened. Underground sections, blast-resistant construction. The Iranians had learned from previous strikes. They had built their command infrastructure to survive. 8 Tomahawks weren't enough to completely destroy the facility, but they were enough to render it non-functional. The above-ground structures collapsed. The antenna farm was wrecked. The access tunnels were blocked. The officers inside survived, mostly, but they had no way to communicate, no way to coordinate, no way to direct further attacks. At 21:58, the Hamptons missiles arrived at the secondary targets. The ammunition storage sites received 4 missiles each. Secondary explosions at both sites confirmed significant stocks of missiles and rockets, weapons that would never threaten American ships. The radar installation received the remaining missiles. The facility that had tracked American shipping, that had provided data for targeting solutions, was eliminated. At 22:03, the strike was complete. Total damage: 1 coastal battery, destroyed. 1 coordination center, severely damaged, non-functional. 2 ammunition storage sites, destroyed. 1 radar installation, destroyed. Estimated Iranian casualties: 80 to 120 personnel. The USS Milius, meanwhile, was still fighting for her life. The fire had been contained at frame 120. It wasn't spreading forward, but it was still burning aft. The damage control teams couldn't extinguish it. They could only prevent it from getting worse. The ship made way toward the Princeton at 8 knots, the fastest speed her remaining propulsion could manage. The cruiser had firefighting capability that the Millius desperately needed. At 22:45, the Princeton came alongside. Her fire teams crossed to the Millius with additional equipment: foam, hoses, breathing apparatus. The combined crews fought the blaze for 4 more hours. At 2:30 on November 1st, the last flames were extinguished. The USS Milius had survived, but at tremendous cost. Final casualty count: 8 dead from the initial impact and fire spread. 12 missing, who were later confirmed dead. Their remains recovered from the burned-out engine room and helicopter hangar over the following days. 20 dead total. 20 American sailors, the highest single engagement death toll of the entire Gulf confrontation. The ship was a wreck. Her entire aft section was gutted. The engine room was destroyed. The helicopter hangar was a burned-out shell. Structural damage extended from frame 100 to frame 180. The repair assessment was brutal. 2 years in dry dock. Complete reconstruction of the aft section. New engines. New hangar. New everything aft of frame 100. Some at the Navy Department questioned whether the ship was worth repairing. The cost would approach the price of a new vessel. They repaired her anyway. The Millius was more than a ship. She was a symbol. A destroyer that had burned for hours, that had lost 20 sailors, that had launched missiles while dying. She couldn't be allowed to sink or be scrapped. Captain Chang received the Navy Cross for his actions during the engagement. His decision to launch counterstrikes while his ship was burning, while his crew was dying, became a case study in aggressive command. The 20 sailors who died were buried with full military honors. The largest memorial service for Gulf War casualties was held at Naval Station San Diego. 3,000 people attended. The diplomatic response followed the established pattern: condemnation, evidence, debate, inaction. But something had changed. The October 31st engagement was the last Iranian attack on American warships. Not because Iran had run out of missiles, not because American defenses had become impregnable, not because of diplomatic pressure or international sanctions, because the calculus finally shifted. In 18 months of confrontation, Iran had attacked American ships over 24 times. They had killed 73 American sailors. They had damaged or destroyed numerous vessels. In response, America had destroyed virtually every Iranian military facility within range of the Gulf: missile batteries, naval bases, command centers, research facilities, production plants, storage depots. Iran's coastal defense capability was essentially eliminated. Their submarine fleet was devastated. Their fast attack boat force was gutted. Their ballistic missile program was crippled. The exchange rate was devastating for Iran. They had killed Americans, but they had lost the ability to threaten American ships in any sustained way. The October 31st attack was their last gasp. A single missile, a single hit, 20 American dead. The response had destroyed 5 facilities and killed over 100 Iranians. The Millius burned, but she survived, and she struck back while burning. That image, a ship on fire, launching missiles into the night, became the defining symbol of the Gulf confrontation. You can hurt us. You can kill us. You cannot stop us. The negotiations that followed lasted 8 months. The ceasefire that emerged was imperfect, fragile, contested. But the shooting stopped. 34 minutes. That's how long it took to go from a burning ship to the destruction of the facilities that supported the attack. 34 minutes from 20 sailors dying to 100. Iranians dying. That speed, that violence, that refusal to accept defeat, even while dying. That's why the USS Milius's name is remembered. Why her crew is honored. Why her sacrifice meant something. She burned. She bled. She lost 20 of her own. And she never stopped fighting. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.